Quick announcement before we get started. I announced it last week, and we've done a little bit of promotion on it through email. But Gaetano, Denardi, and I are going to be doing a live session with a couple different topics on Thursday, this coming Thursday, January 21st, 12 p.m. Eastern. There's an email that went out with a Zoom link. If you didn't receive the Zoom link because you are on the email address or otherwise, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn DM. We'll also be publishing it with a link on my post tomorrow. So feel free to join there. We all love Gaetano and his perspective. We're also trying out a new time slot. A lot of people in the UK and Europe have been pumped about this because I know Charlie's here, and it's late for him, and he's a real warrior getting here. But for the most part, people in the UK and other parts of Europe are unable to attend. So we're going to open up a different time and see how that works. And so if you are in Europe or the UK and you've been asking for this, I would highly recommend that you come, because based on the attendance, we will decide at what frequency we actually do that second event. Cool. So getting into the topics here, I'm going to start out with one. And I mentioned this a couple times to people, but I want to be really direct about it. A large part of the reason that I post content on LinkedIn is to listen to what people say and to understand how people react, because you learn a lot of things. You learn about whether or not someone understood. I talk in a lot of acronyms and, things like that. Some people just don't get it. They ask questions that then empowers you to change how you message it. You also receive objections, you receive positive affirmation, you receive all these different things. Right. And so before we got on here for 15 minutes, I had 15 minutes free. I was going through the comments from my post today, responding to the ones that I could, and also just reading and consuming who's commenting, what are they saying, what can I take out of that to either fuel my future content strategy, my messaging, other things like that. And so we posted the 2021 demand predictions. And one of the predictions, I think, required a little bit more clarity. And that prediction was on companies are going to need to lower their quality standards on content. And I think that was misunderstood a little bit. So let's clarify it. What companies need to lower their standard on is the requirement of production quality. So when we think about content, the quality of the information is far more important than the production quality. I think I've demonstrated that, and we have some videos about how bad my video content used to look, right? And even what we're doing right now wouldn't pass the bar for a lot of companies, which is sad, right? Like a smart person couldn't create content like this because it doesn't meet some arbitrary standard of 1080p. It's only 720, right? Or, all those different types of reasons about why a company would say no to putting out content. And so we need to think about this in terms of production quality. It gets in the high standard of production quality gets in the way of actually putting out content. Super high quality video. That Zoom is 480p. It's not going to work. I didn't have a good enough mic. I was using my AirPods. So let's try and record it again next week. If the information is good, that's really what matters, especially when you're getting started. But even if you're a big brand, I personally find, I think a lot of people are starting to get there. I think people will get it when I say this, is that I think people like it when it's more raw. I think people like it when there's skips in the track. I think people like it when someone interrupts me, or when, we didn't record in QuickTime in the background, so I'm in Zoom in 480p. Who cares? People get so caught up in how do I make this absolutely perfect. And I think that, to clarify, that is really what we need to focus on in B2B. The same thing happens, and I love bringing in parallels in B2C. I love it because the thing that if you look at the things that have already happened in B2C and then translate it, not replicate it, translate it into why it matters into B2B, you can basically see the future into B2B. And so the parallel I'm going to look at here is at the early stages of organic influencer marketing in B2C, brands forced people, their influencer partnerships, to meet certain brand guidelines and to put certain things in the copy that people already wrote for them. And what happens is it comes off very inauthentic. And they also got in the way because some of the people created a bunch of good content and they threw it out because it didn't meet some brand standard. And what have companies moved to? Allowing, because that person understands their audience better than the brand does, allowing that person to translate what the brand means and then distribute it to their audience in the way that they think will work best. And so I think that that's sort of what is happening in B2B right now, not in an influencer type of style, but in terms of companies needing to let people be people. Let people do those things and stop getting in the way of people doing the things that are authentic and that may not be low quality in order to actually create business outcomes. So I'll get it started there. I think that deserved a little bit of clarity. Maybe there's a couple questions. Otherwise, I can surely keep rolling through this agenda.
No questions on what you just talked about, but we have a few that were submitted in advance. Do you want to keep rolling and then we can
questions in advance?
Questions in advance?
Yeah.
There.
Actually, got one about what hair product I use from James. He's a real really likes to troll me. So
actually, Charlie just threw one in the chat. Can you clarify? Did you say B2C is leading B2B?
If you look at changes, yeah, this is a really good question. I would love to explain this in more detail. If you look at things that have already happened in B2B, not just in a marketing perspective, but in overall market dynamics, how people buy things, all these different things, B2C is earlier than B2B because B2B is more traditional and B2C is more open to taking chances, risks, whatever you want to call it. I think that's a generalized statement. I don't think that's a blanket statement, but I think it makes sense in a lot of different cases. And so a couple of the things that are very obvious that have been happening for a while, whenever SaaS companies develop product-led, e-commerce had been long before that, right? It's basically the same thing. It's removing the salesperson as a gate to buying a product, right? The same thing, if you look at that exact same parallel in brands like a toothpaste brand that would normally sell through Target to the end consumer, Target being the sales rep in this case, or a distributor in a lot of hardware type of models. Now that brand just passes right by that person and goes directly to the customer. And they sell it on their e-commerce store, not through the distribution. And so that's the direct to consumer model has a really interesting parallel, specifically in hardware companies that distribute physical goods. Because the distributors, unless they provide a significant amount of value, which most don't, are going to get squeezed out because they're taking margin to sit in the middle and they don't add enough value anymore. And so smart B2B brands will circumvent their distributors and go directly to the customer. That's one. If we look at like overall marketing tactics, companies, B2C companies have been using brand sponsorships, influencer marketing type of stuff for a really long time. Look at like Jordan with Nike, right? B2B companies are going to get there. They're not there yet because they just don't move fast enough, but they'll get there. Sangram from Terminus is pretty close, except he was a co-founder, not like a brand partnership, but it's pretty close. So B2B companies will eventually start to hold on to that exclusive deals with people that have audiences, and those people will create content for their platforms or for their distribution. So I'll give you an example. If I was 6 Cents, I would hire me to make content. I would give them the product I would give me the product for free, and I would hire me to create videos of how I use 6 Cents, the tests that I ran, which ones were successful, which ones weren't, and then put that out on my own platform to people that are B2B SaaS MarTech people that would buy 6 Cents. I think that would be smarter than building a booth at Dreamforce, doing that 20 times with 20 different people. I just think it would be a smarter use of money. And so we'll see brands do that. It won't be overnight. I'm trying to think of other parallels because I think this is really interesting. Those are the two I got off the top of my head.
There's another question that kind of continues along the same path. How can we make people in B2B understand that they're selling to humans who happen to be at work? And so just taking this topic from a slightly different angle.
By spending time with them. I really think it's that simple. Because when you spend time with them, you realize the things that they like and how they talk and where they spend their time and where they get their information and how they want to be treated. And then you have a lot more empathy when you actually try and go and do marketing to them. A lot of the things that we talk about are rooted in not understanding your customers and not having empathy for them, which then drives you to do a lot of these things that are clearly selfish and in your best interest and have no benefit to the end consumer. So I think that one is honestly very simple. Do Zooms right now and as quickly as you can. If the company's at a stage and the product is high enough value and it justifies this, go and visit them. I was talking on a podcast earlier today. Since 2014, whenever I'm in a business, like whenever I'm a marketing employee of a business, I spend almost the first 3 months of my time there with customers in the field, with sales reps, on my own with people, shadowing how they use the product, talking to companies and people that don't use our product and use our competitors, spending time at conferences, going to the sessions that the people that I want to eventually try and market and sell to, which sessions they go to. And I understand what information they're listening to. And I try and understand their perspective. And then I try and find them afterwards and have a conversation with them about what they thought about it. And then you learn. And so I think that one is a simple advice, very difficult to execute because companies don't, like I keep saying, there's a lot of like basic marketing fundamentals that are not incentivizing companies. There's no marketing KPI or metric about talking to your customers once a week. And that's an issue because the longer you do that, the longer that you're marketing in a way that's most likely ineffective. So that's what I see there.
Jessica, continuing along the same topic, do you think this still applies when sales cycles are 365 days plus, like for enterprise year-long plus sales cycles?
100%.
It's different.
100%. I think it arguably could be more important when the sales cycles are that long. Right? There's no transactional marketing that's going to get you enough buyers in order to move through that process that takes so long in like not understanding customers and running ebook downloads to people to have your sales reps get them into meetings. Those people are going to get filtered out way long before 365 days of a sales cycle in order to complete that transaction. It's complex. And so I would argue that a lot of the things that we're doing in marketing, a community, who knows? David's been on here for a while. 6 months later, he gets a CMO job somewhere because a great opportunity comes by. That sales cycle is 5 days, not 365. And so like, not saying that you're going to hire us, David. I was just using it as an example. But those are some of the things that I think about. And so, yeah.
No, I think that wraps that topic up really nicely. We have a new, or someone I don't recognize that I'm excited to bring on with a couple questions.
Yeah.
I'm going to say your name right though. Ewa Singer. I don't, yep. I'm going to unmute you.
Yeah, my first name's Easton. I just have my first initial and then last name after.
Got it.
Easton?
Yeah.
What's up, Easton? Good to have you here. Is this your first time?
It is, yeah, but I've been listening to you a while and I finally got the time to hop on, so I'm extremely excited.
Fantastic. Where are you from?
From Durango, Colorado.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. What's your question? Here to help.
So, one big question that I've been wondering for a while. So, when Google they're planning on getting rid of third-party cookies, and I was curious how you think it's going to affect CRMs such as HubSpot and Salesforce and their tracking ability.
So there's a couple of different things that I think about when I look at this. So the first short answer is I have no idea. The second part of the answer is I don't care very much, right? Like the people that I don't need those types of things. I understand what's going on, right? And so I think that's the key where people need to get to, is that like some of these things that you rely on, having them go away might actually be a benefit, because you stop getting all of these dumb questions from executives about where stuff is coming from. Like I would be thrilled if this stuff went away and it was not possible to do it. One, because I would have a major advantage across a lot of different companies and industries. And two, because it might give some freedom to marketers where you can, or you're not going to be able to track the exact ideal customer journey, which by the way, never replicates.
Mhm.
Nobody's journey is the same. Nobody's journey is actually linear. And so, happy to answer a follow-up there, but like the place where you might miss out is retargeting. And I don't like, I don't have enough information to give you a black and white, like firm answer on this, but I don't think that retargeting with a Facebook pixel is going away.
Yeah. Cool. And so I had another question too. So I
Yeah,
recently
please.
got a new job. At
Congrats.
basically, thank you. At like an investment company, and we're essentially asset manager, and they have all the toys to play with software wise between HubSpot and Salesforce. And coming in, I found out we have an extreme amount of noise, contact wise, huge contact list, email. And I was wondering what you'd recommend first to go through and kind of clean up those aspects. And then additionally, I was curious about what you consider best practices for uploading new contacts into Salesforce and HubSpot from a CSV file into like essentially email drip campaigns.
I love this one. Okay, remind me on the first part, because I already have notes on the second part. What was the first part of the question?
Yeah. So how would you recommend cleaning up an
yeah.
extreme contact noise?
Yeah. So, why do you need to clean it up?
So we have a lot of sales reps that basically like it's an incredible amount. Just multiple of them haven't been touched on in a very long time. Number one, there's potential a high amount of duplicates that are within there. And I think, so when I came in, the syncage between HubSpot and Salesforce, I don't think it was done properly. So that was like a huge issue. I've been going through and trying to figure out how to essentially sync it so it works properly, doesn't duplicate it. And additionally onto that, when you upload the contacts, are you uploading your contacts through HubSpot first, Salesforce first, or does it not matter?
Mm-hmm. If the sync's happening properly, it doesn't matter. And I typically don't, the way that I am going to give you my advice, I'm just going to give a big caveat here. I don't use the stuff the same way as people do, right?
Yeah.
And so like I have not every lead, not every contact in HubSpot is getting pushed into Salesforce. A lot of people that sit in most HubSpot systems do not belong in Salesforce. You know what I mean? And so if you can set your sync rules where they have to hit specific triggers, a lot of people call that an MQL score. I call that a binary, like buying intent signal that's declared. And so at that point, demo request, firmographical in the ICP going to Salesforce or whatever criteria you decide. And so I would upload on the HubSpot side. And in terms of like uploading lists to do like email nurtures, like you can upload the CSV and then you can run them through like a 5-step automation. You can send bulk emails at a specific time, one on a one-time send. You can do a lot of different things. I just don't do those things. I find that it's in order to source the list, make sure that it's GDPR compliant, and then actually the effort required to make those emails work, all of those different things, and the output that you get, all of that time and potentially investment and things like that would be much better used in a different way. That's sort of like my stance. And so what I've done in a different way is that when sales puts contacts in, they push into HubSpot and then they get into a flow. And like I said to other people, like email, whether it's nurture or one-time send, I prefer to do one-time send, which forces you to have a new piece of content or creative or video or podcast or something else to send every week, which forces you to create content that actually creates value, not create 3 pieces of content and let that thing run on autopilot for 3 years. And then so go one-time send. and then just move off of that. And it becomes one mechanism of distribution, right? So people are coming in and they just get into a flow where they're going to get whatever email is happening on that Tuesday or whatever day you decide to send. And then that Tuesday, it's going to be a case study. And an hour after that email goes out with the case study, the ads are going to go live on Facebook and Instagram. And then the YouTube video is going to get updated for the pre-roll to go to that actual case study. And so it's a system. Like, I don't think about one channel or another. I think about content and then repackaging that content in different places that fit the distribution channel. So an email, it's going to be potentially like a Wistia thumbnail embed where you click through, you get to the website, it automatically starts playing and they're on the case study page. In a YouTube pre-roll, it might have to get edited so the first 5 seconds are ultra interesting and avoid the skip. And then it's going to drive them probably back to that case study. In the Facebook ads, it's going to be the same thing that drives them back to the case study, knowing that they're going to be on mobile and assuming that they're not going to watch the video, right? And so all those different dynamics in distribution of one single asset of content. And then the next week you think about doing the same thing. It might be a different asset. The channels might be different, things like that. That's the way that I think about it, which is singularly focused on how good your content and creative are. And so that is the reason why a lot of companies struggle with this. And it goes back to the quality standard thing, right? Like, can you produce a solid asset once a week consistently to hit those types of milestones with different variations and components? And a lot of companies can't, which is why they would rather lean on the email nurture and never update it. In terms of cleaning the database, I think that like there's probably better advice on like Google or something like that than what I would provide right now. And so, yeah, like I would look at, different properties inside of the CRM, whether they're disengaged with email sends, whether, you can look at a lot of different factors, but like I said, I think that there's probably someone that has a better advice that's more specialized in that component that would point you in the right direction.
Awesome. That's great advice. So like basically what you're saying on HubSpot, that was kind of my theory going into and give you context behind it. So all of our sales guys, they have no idea how to use HubSpot. Like I came in and they're using a fraction of the plan that we had. And I basically proposed this idea because all the sales guys, all they use is Salesforce. So you gave me some ammunition to fight that argument, to start having them use Salesforce and get them in that flow to actually categorize all the SQLs and get it more efficient. So thank you for that.
Totally. Yeah. I don't meet very many sales reps that have access to Salesforce and HubSpot that you spend a lot of time in HubSpot.
Yeah.
I barely spend any time in HubSpot or Marketo. You don't need it. You know what I mean? It's just like everything available is in Salesforce that you need to make decisions. And then like, yeah, HubSpot's a cool tool. Yeah, it can do a lot of things, but you can also do all of those things natively inside of platforms or on your own. The only thing that I would use HubSpot for is emails and workflow automation for like marketing ops and data and things like that. List building sometimes becomes interesting. And then the most important part of any marketing automation system is just last touch attribution with the cookies that were mentioned. Because the last touch becomes really interesting to me in terms of looking at that. Because in a lot of cases, the way that we market, first touch is always also last touch, right? Blind contact, Google search, ad, demo request, go. Blind contact, referral traffic from G2, demo request, go. Blind contact, click on a display ad. And then so you can start to look, where is this traffic coming from and what is happening to them afterwards? So it's not only, I look at two things. I look at the conversion point. Was it a demo request? Was it a contact us? Was it a web chat? Was it an ebook download? Did they sign up for our newsletter? Where was the point that they converted? And then what channel drove them to that conversion from a last touch standpoint? And those things married up, you find a lot of interesting things when you start looking further down funnel about how they become customers. And so the places where the thing that I want to have happen is a demo request through organic search, direct traffic, or branded paid search. Those are the three.
Awesome. So another question for you. Have you ever used call tracking software such as CallRail and integrated it with HubSpot? to get recordings and basically track exactly where these contacts came from with dynamic numbers? And if so, have you ran into duplicated contact problems with that integrations?
Yes, I have. I had, because it was a big an attribution challenge that I needed to solve in 2016, 17, when a lot of people from hospitals were calling into our main line and we had outside sales. And so our main line would go into customer success, customer support. And then customer success, customer support would get a call that came from marketing, and they would ask what the rep was in that Indiana territory. And the person that was on the other line would just give them their phone number and their email, and you completely lose tracking of that. And that was about 30% of our inbound pipeline and revenue once I closed this gap. And so it was an important thing. We've installed it on other companies and it's not that meaningful. And so making sure that the juice is worth the squeeze, so to speak, I think is really important up front. Because it requires manual work. It's not just like somebody calls, the contact gets created, it gets tracked. Like somebody needs to answer the phone, put someone's name in, attach it to their number, and then track the opportunity, the progression afterwards. And that's where the manual work right there is where this process falls down.
Have you ever used the transcribe function within those softwares before?
I would listen to the calls.
Listen to calls. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking more of along the lines for content creation, and so I want to have someone on my team essentially write a script, analyze the transcript that comes through, and analyze the questions that go through for keyword research and content creation. I was just curious if you've ever heard any thoughts of that or processes.
Yeah, I mean, that's a potential use case, but like I said at the beginning, the easiest way is just to go talk to them, not listen to the recorded call on the phone.
Yeah.
And so my recommendation would be to just go directly to them. And then if you're able to create some amount of awareness where people actually engage with the content, you learn everything else through the comments.
Totally.
So I figure out where to go based on what's happening, based on the response of my previous post.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can get to that point that the feedback happens organically on its own. At the beginning, you need to go out and source that. And then there's times where like, I need to take a step back and actually go and talk to the market individually with a different purpose than listening against content.
Cool. And last question. Have you ever heard or used the software Demand Jump?
Have never heard of it, have never used it.
Well, then it's irrelevant then.
Cool.
It's really cool. You should check it out though. And it's a wild tool for content creation and attribution modeling.
Sweet. Awesome to
Thank
have you. That was a rapid fire question round. Everyone that's on the Zoom that are OGs, take note. You can come in here and fire them off.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ashley actually has a follow-up on this, and we have a few other like CRM related questions and some podcasting questions. So we got a lot. I'm going to bring Ashley on. I want you to say your follow-up because I feel like it needs more context than what's in the chat.
Oh, you referenced the flow after they're in Salesforce. Is that something that you're sending only to prospects, or is it continuing past conversion to customer?
I think it ultimately depends on your business model. However, when I say creating a system, it is a marketing system across awareness, intent, and using third-party and first-party data. You know what I mean? So that's what the system is, right? If you're not into the emails, you might see it on LinkedIn. If you don't use LinkedIn or Facebook, you might listen to it on the podcast. And so just giving people a lot of different avenues to consume it in the way that they want, I think is the key. And so what was your question on the CRM again?
Like if they're in that email list and they're getting that email, does it continue past convert to customer?
I think it depends on the business model and the content that's being distributed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like the content that I'm creating right now, it does not matter at all whether it would go to the CMO that's my happiest customer or someone that's never heard of me, right? If it was another thing where it was a video with like a sales pitch about how to do something, you know what I mean? Then I would send it to, I probably wouldn't send that piece of content, but if someone was, then you would send it more to prospects. And so I use that lens of what is the intent of the content? Would it bring, is the value difference between a customer and a non-customer different? like case studies, for instance. I think people would, this is an interesting example. I'll send case studies to customers. A ton of customers don't know about that use case. They would probably love to see that video about how that hospital in their, that they respect is using the product in this way and getting this result. Those are some of the, and like an announcement about a new integration. I think that, so if you think about if you're doing the content system right, you should be able to send it across the entire customer lifecycle. Some might lean heavier to customer side, some might lean heavier to prospect side, and you're probably going to have like a separate stream for customer marketing that's a lot more focused on customer success in like a 2.0 model.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Cool.
While you're on,
Good to see
Ashley,
you, Ashley.
actually
Nice to
stay
see you
on.
too.
Yeah, stay on, because you submitted a really good question in advance that really kind of breaks down a change that's happening in your org. And I don't know about you all, but let's take a break from CRM for a minute.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
But first, may I just say I love the organic thing you've got going on with your moody fern.
This tree. It did arrive. Yep. For everyone listening to the podcast afterwards, you have no idea what I'm talking about. Well, that's okay.
Come to Demand Gen Live and you'll get in on the fern joke for that. But your question was super, super good. So lay out the context, because I think that context is really important. And then don't worry, there were a few other CRM questions. We will get back to them, but I think this is going to be a really good one to unpack together. And I might have a few things to add too after you weigh in, Chris.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Love
Okay.
that.
So the context is that we're like a small team spread across a SaaS portfolio. So we have like 7 people in-house. We're hiring 2 new developers soon, and we have maybe 3 to 5 contractors across marketing and development at any time. And we have decided to align the entire team around customer experience this year as a bit of like a mental shift from how we used to operate, which was silos doing their own thing. And I'm really excited about that. So everyone answers to customer success, but multiple people wear multiple hats, like across different brands and different departments. So someone may do a little success and support and then some sales, or someone may do a little marketing and success. So different people are like putting on their different hats at different times during the day. And my question is like, if you can recommend workflows or an org structure for keeping that organized like across the portfolio, because we're trying to transition into sprints. We are trying to optimize the bandwidth that we have so that we can continue to grow. And if you want me to, I can give you like who that team is comprised of.
Let me take a swing at it, and then we'll see if I got it or not. So one of the pieces of what you mentioned I really like, which is having empathy for other people's jobs. I think one of the best reasons why I continue to be a really strong marketer is that I spend a lot of time, not currently because I do it, but at other companies, I spend a ton of time with the sales team. I spend a ton of time listening to them. I spend a ton of time trying to understand them, right? And so, and then I would go to the sales meetings, and I would get to feel that. I would go to implementations. And so I think that is a key for marketers to take away, whether it's sales, success, product. Like, start spending time and having empathy and understanding of other people's functions that are outside of your little SEO project, right? I think that's one good thing that I really like. It's like, if we get back to the larger question, it's really easy for companies to say that they want to center around customer experience. And then the most obvious change, just like the CRO change that's going on right now that they think is going to create alignment, which it's not, is that they use organizational structure as the method to feel like they're going to create an outcome versus changing their mindset. Right? And so mindset is what drives all of the things downstream. Organizational structure is like duct tape trying to change something in the easiest way possible to make the optics feel like it's actually changing. And so in my view, I would focus more with this core team on the mindset, which then drives certain KPIs and behaviors. And then org structure can fuel that, but org structure alone is not going to get this done. And so if you want to focus on experience, you need to have people understanding what that means, what types of behaviors matter, in the ways that they should be thinking, and then align KPIs or otherwise incentives to create the behaviors that you want.
One thing I would add on to this is,
Thank you, Megan.
I think what is really needed in a situation like this, because it can get really messy really quickly and really disorganized, right? Which is, I think, the crux of your question is like, how can we work together in an organized fashion if this is sort of this new org design experiment that we're trying out? I think the first step, if I was leading this function or at the company, if I was like the customer success person that was sort of architecting this, is I would
He's on this call, by the way.
For that. I would craft like a super clear vision of what the ideal end state is that we are trying to achieve. When you have this many people wearing that many hats, the thing that you need alignment on is what is the one thing that we are trying to drive towards? What is that North Star? I agree completely with Chris's point on mindset, because that's very much a part of that. But I think that's how you create that alignment. And the reality is you do need some architect and probably also like a project manager that is helping keep everyone organized, identifying dependencies, unblocking people. Otherwise, the type of structure you describe could become inefficient if improperly managed over time, or you could have sort of those conflicts. So incentives, goals are key, and they should be laddered up right to that North Star. I think that's the crux of it. It's a big change to make too. So I don't know how far along you guys are in this process, but finding an opportunity to carve out like a portion of it and try it out to see what problems arise, what works and what doesn't work before you involve everyone. Your team seems not that big, so that doesn't seem there's that too many people involved, but that's another way to look at it, because inevitably you are going to have other challenges that will arise with this, and you just want to get ahead of those and figure out how you can solve for those. In theory, I love this idea, but those are some of the things that I would think about in addition to what Chris said is, have that really clear North Star and vision, goals and incentives and mindset come from that. And is there a way for you to try this out with a few people to just uncover the kinks and try and work those out before you put the whole org through this change?
Yeah, we spent some time today trying to say like, okay, if this is sprint 0 and we have 9 days, because yesterday everyone was off, like what projects do you hope to have done in 2 weeks, and what amount of other people's time do you need to execute that in addition to your own, so that we can kind of get estimates of who's success for what percentage of time and marketing for what percentage of time, or what projects need to be prioritized based on a goal of this customer success KPI. So that we can sort of, I think everyone's stretched to their bandwidth and not realizing that when they say yes to a project, then that means another person assumes it will get pushed through.
Yeah, that's to Megan's point on like this is a project management challenge, right? Yeah.
And I think the other thing is, I don't know if it's a good idea for each individual person to pick a new project every 2 weeks, right? Like, so it's like zoom out a little bit. What is the ideal end state that we are trying to get to? And in each sprint, can you define like the most important things in that sprint and then align everyone else around that? And some weeks, some individuals may be, more accountable or have more deliverables on their plate. But I think what you want to avoid in this case is every single person is going to want to contribute and make their mark, right? So you don't want to put it on people to like come up with their project every 2 weeks, because that can quickly spiral out of control. You want to give people the creativity. So maybe you don't have to dictate the exact projects, but like, okay, in this sprint, these are the top 3 things we're trying to achieve. And what can we do as a collective group to get there? And who makes sense to sort of lead this particular sprint with other people supporting?
I like that.
That's another way to, think about it.
Yeah, I feel like it has to get messy before it gets nice. Like we're going to be in the weeds of it for a month.
That's why a test,
Yeah.
I think, is interesting, because
Mhm.
inevitably you're not going to avoid problems. So the way to mitigate against that is, can I identify those problems with a smaller subset of the company
Mhm.
so that we can know what they are, think through solutions, and not put everybody through that experience. Again, if your team is small enough, though, and everyone's bought in, can be part of the fun as well. But that's a good way to think about that. But I think like the danger here is too many people doing too many things, and then you end up in a place where you're doing too many things like okay instead of not a few things excellently. And so that's the main risk that I would mitigate against.
Thanks. I appreciate it, y'all.
You have to let us know how it
Cool.
goes, though, because
Oh,
Keep
I
us
will.
updated.
in theory, I love this.
Cool. Thanks, Ashley. Good to see you. I'm gonna hit on one of the agenda topics, David's top topic. Maybe there'll be a follow up. Yeah, look at he's pumped up. So we'll skip what can we be outsourced. We'll come back to that later. But I want to make sure I get to this one. So let's squeeze it in. Early findings with intent data. Not only, and so when we think about intent data, I see it being used in one primary way, which is different than how I would want to use it. And so when we look at it, the majority of how it's being used is intent data signal at the account level to create contacts of the people that work at those accounts that fit the job titles that we're going to leads in Salesforce prioritized go outbound. It's using an intent data signal to do sales. And that's the way that that's normally being used. And so what I was super interested in as a marketer is like, can this be used to effectively deploy marketing, not sales? And so we've been testing deeply for the past 6 months. And most recently I've been testing with 6sense, to be transparent. I've been testing that for a little while, and I'm going to share some things that we found so far. These are not, I would say that the indicators are there. However, I wouldn't say that they're conclusive yet. So I'm just sharing stuff that we're seeing so far. So the first thing is we tested G2, Bambora, Trust Radius, probably one other intent data provider, to put data at the account level inside of both LinkedIn and account-based audiences in Facebook and Instagram, with the job titles layered on top of it that we're going after, and then deployed marketing, and then measured the result of that against influenced demo requests downstream, as well as all of the early stage marketing, like in-platform metrics that you would look at. And when we did that test, this is excluding 6sense, when we did those tests with data dropped in natively at the account level, we saw that the performance of those were quite bad. Like worse than if we were going after CFOs and we took an account list of these companies that showed intent, and then we targeted the CFOs at those companies. Just targeting regular CFOs worked better. Just really fascinating. The reason being is probably because you have more scale, right? Like our intent account lists were whatever, like I think probably 500 to 5,000 accounts. Maybe at the max it was 20,000 accounts. If you go out and you target CFOs with company firmographics, you'll get way more than 500 to 5,000 that still fit your ICP, depending on the company and things like that. And if you only have 500 accounts as your total TAM, and you're waiting for intent signals, you're going to be waiting a pretty long time because there's only 500 accounts. So that was one finding. The next thing is that when we started rolling out 6sense, we've actually seen decent results activating specific types of marketing that is leveraged through 6sense data. To be clear, this is not an endorsement. This is just me telling you what we're finding. And so the couple things that we found was, if you take intent signals at the account level with narrow, so what I look at is buying intent keywords, blah, 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 software, sales engagement pricing, your competitor brand terms, like those types of things, like things that have actual intent versus low intent. And I'll go through that in a little bit more detail because I think it's critically important. If you take those signals and then you push them into, and you push that custom audience into in a LinkedIn custom account list, and then you layer on the job titles, and then you actually execute product marketing on LinkedIn, you're going to get super efficient demo requests. The challenge is that it's only going to be 1 or 2 because the audiences are small, because there's not enough intent. Right. And so like, if you're cool getting $200-$300 demo requests every month and calling it a day, then you can use that tactic, but that's pretty much all you're going to get, because there's only 300 to 1,000 accounts that are doing those types of actions. And so what do companies do to create the volume is they start scaling out the intent signals that they're looking for. So instead of sales engagement platform pricing, they're going to look at sales engagement. And that drives hundreds of thousands. I don't know the keyword research, but I guess hundreds of thousands of searches. That term shows up in all of these different third-party blogs, and you create a lot of junk accounts. Then you create either bad leads or inefficient ads, and you get back to where you started. And so we are seeing it work in that fashion. Just know that it's not going to be the thing that moves your business all the way forward. So we're doing that. But again, when we think about like results on influence demo requests on LinkedIn versus intent audiences that are small and cold audiences that are large, the cold audiences drive way more volume at an acceptable cost for the ACV of the products that we're marketing. And so you can use both in tandem, but the companies are making a mistake, in my view, by doing ABM and only targeting 100 accounts and forgetting everyone else. I think they're also making a mistake by only using intent data and only targeting accounts that have shown some level of intent. Because guess what? A majority of the market isn't. And so you're just like, you're ignoring this massive bucket of opportunity that you can go out and get on your own through paid or organic or however else you want to do it from a marketing standpoint. And right now you're literally nobody to them because you're not marketing, you're not targeting. The next finding that has been really interesting, actually, I'm pumped about this one, is that you can take 6 Sense intent data, push it into an audience in Google Analytics, and then use that audience to target. Most companies will probably do display, but we're actually using YouTube pre-roll video ads with a high production, high quality video. This is one place where I think production quality does matter, is YouTube pre-roll. And we're putting out that video, and we're getting $45 demo requests with a company that normally is paying $600. And again, the challenge is that we've only gotten 2 this month because there's not enough accounts. And so in general, if you use high intent terms, sales engagement platform pricing, sales engagement vendor comparison matrix, best alternative to SalesLoft, whatever those types of terms, versus sales email automation, sales engagement, the differences in the level of intent of those searches are dramatically different. And so when you focus on the high, you're going to get super efficient conversions. It's just only going to be a few. I think that's all that I am seeing so far.
Well, David has a follow-up question. I'll bring you on. You can ask your tune question, David.
So you're absolutely right? If you make it really, really tight, you get a direct hit, but just so much fewer of them. If you make it too wide, you just get nothing but noise and your system is overwhelmed and you're not better off. So I guess the trick is to be in the Goldilocks zone, right? Not too hot, not too cold. How have you had a chance yet to try and just gradually open little by little until you discover where the noise level starts? I mean, it could be just one word creates crazy noise. Mm-hmm. So just like with PPC, it takes a while to suss out and tune and what are the negative keywords I need to use in the PPC example. Mm-hmm. Have you had a chance yet to kind of be able to spend that type of quality time, if you will, on tuning up the intent that way?
I haven't, but I can commit to trying to push the needle on that. Yeah, the challenge is that we have small audiences over here with intent data, and we have really like high volume efficient audiences that are working over here that are cold native. I don't need $100,000 a year plus SaaS tool to get the targeting. I just go into LinkedIn and type in the job titles and the companies that I want. And I just do it. And so that's the disconnect, right? But I will commit to doing that. I will commit to kind of opening the net and seeing whether or not the results, if there's a breaking point. I'm just spitballing here, but my guess is it's binary. I wish that there was a lukewarm, but I'm not sure that there is.
Right. So the other thought is, if you do open it a bit too wide, knowing that you've got noise, depending on what's available to you, is there another tool that one could use, like anonymous website visiting kind of identification technology, that you can use use as crosshairs? So we don't know the IPs that are coming to our address, but we're seeing some intent and something else. And that when you get two signals, potentially that becomes more indicative of something. So by widening your net in two technologies, you're looking for the overlap, which is what you really care about. It's a theoretical idea. It's a question of how you do it in practice, of course.
I think that's something that you should run the experiment on, and then let us know what you find.
I'd love the opportunity. I know. I'd like to.
Yeah, that would be great. One thing that I missed that I think is really interesting, especially not only on the marketing side, but I think more on the sales dev side, is when you open the net on intent and you're going after 10,000 plus employee accounts, it's inevitable that every account's going to have intent, right? You sell sales enablement software to companies that are more than 10,000 employees. What are the odds that somebody in that 10,000 employee company searches something related to sales enablement or visits some blog related to sales enablement or anything like that and they probably already use your competitor and they're locked into a 3-year deal, and you're going to have a bunch of SDRs thinking they're surging and go and chase them around, right? So I really feel, especially at the enterprise level, I watch this, I just listen to what people tell me, like this is a real challenge. And so on the sales side, is it better than just like getting ebook downloads and cold calling people? I totally believe that it is. Is it better than using something to activate a different form of cold outbound than this? Yeah, I think that, and just logically it sounds like it would work a little bit better. You're basically prioritizing who to go after. So is it better than what's happening right now? Yeah. Is it the best thing that those people could do? For some companies, probably. So I'll continue to share. When I look at this lens for MarTech vendors, I'm looking to use it for marketing. And so I'm not even sure why x16 is in the ABM category anymore. They should be in the sales development tool category right now based on how it's being used. That's what I see.
I have a list of people with lots of fun questions. Should we jump
bring them in? Yeah, let's do it.
For that, Charlie, you had a couple of questions. I'm gonna bring you on since you were so fun last week. I know you had a couple, but I feel free to go in the direction that is most pressing for you.
Yeah, well, I had a very stupid question about the difference between accounts based and lead based, but yeah, that's been rectified.
Time out first. All these people in the UK are complaining that this is too late, and you're proving them wrong. You're in the UK, right?
Yeah, I'm in the UK. I'm in London.
Yeah. What is it? 1 a.m. there?
It's about 1:30. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not ideal.
Guy's a warrior.
But at the same time, I was thinking about inviting a bunch of my mates to the UK to this, but I kind of like being the only Brit here, makes me feel special.
You are special.
You guys are like 4 or 5 years ahead of us anyway, so I can get an edge on the UK market. So.
Cool. What you got?
Yeah, my question is actually going back to the CRM stuff. So at the moment, tomorrow I'm literally about to embark on this epic quest of trying to set up HubSpot for LinkedIn, like lead scoring, basically. Because at the moment, like we're mainly SDR based, as I mentioned last week. and I just have no idea what's going on. Like, I go to these guys and I'm like, how's it going? Like, how are you prospecting? How are you messaging? Who are you messaging? It's just like a black box to me. But I don't have like the blessings of like the full HubSpot accounts. I don't have a huge budget. So at the moment I'm thinking about trying to auto fill people my guys connect with onto HubSpot lists, and then have them manually score them. And then obviously I can then match website conversions against those. I guess my question is, you know, whether you think that's a worthwhile process to set up, whether you recommend any other tools for that.
What are you trying to solve? Are you trying to solve measurement or what?
I need to be able to attribute like how they're engaging in LinkedIn, because at this stage we're about to launch our product. We haven't launched it yet, right? So the whole thing is kind of getting connections and warming them up and trying to develop partnerships with them to help do product development.
And
so
when
the
you
whole
say,
point,
and go ahead, please.
I think the whole point of trying to funnel them onto email, in my mind, is a complete waste of time. Like I largely think, whereas we can keep them engaged on LinkedIn and have like that relationship develop. And if that's our main medium, it's like, why am I trying to push them onto HubSpot to just do email drip campaigns when my guys can just engage them directly on LinkedIn? But the software we're using isn't geared towards that. And that's like the biggest hurdle for me.
So when you say engagement, what are you trying to measure?
Just interest in it. You get direct feedback from them, customer conversations, but
Like
also
inside of a DM, like I want to know what the DM said inside of HubSpot.
I don't want to see what it said inside the DM, but I want, you know, I want a basic like scoring system so I can see who my guys are connecting with, and then have them manually rate that connection like outcome in certain ways. That makes sense. That was how I was figuring it out. So thinking about doing it.
Yeah. So I'm gonna give you an answer. I wouldn't do it, but here's an answer. So what you can do is I would get a tool called Seamless AI. It's one of the cheapest contact information sources. It also has a LinkedIn, whatever you call plugin or whatever you would call it. You can literally go to someone's LinkedIn profile and click download to Seamless, and it's going to match up their company and their contact. It's going to pull their email, and then you can have it just drop it into HubSpot.
Okay.
And so once they drop, and then you're going to have to build a workflow for those people. It's going to create a ton of extra work for, in my view, not a lot of upside. But that's the way that I would do it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I know how to sort of do that integration to get that data. I can just use Zapier, I think, to get that data into HubSpot. I guess my question was largely, are people having LinkedIn lead lists on HubSpot as a starting point for their flow, I guess. Yeah. No.
Short answer is I don't know. I would guess that people use Sales Navigator, but honestly, I'm not like a big outbound type of, I don't do a lot of this stuff. Let me say it that way. So I don't know.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks very much for
yeah. Sorry, I couldn't be more helpful for this one.
No,
I thought it was. I listened to it. I thought the last one was real helpful.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Cool.
That's all I've got. Cheers.
Great to see you, Charlie.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Thanks for sticking around with us.
Mate, I love you guys. It's amazing. I was getting really excited over the weekend.
Cool. Happy to hear it.
For that. Benjamin has a podcast question, and then Abe, I saw you have a hot take that you want Chris's opinion on. But
gosh, yeah, let's get a hot take little segment going on here.
I know. Oh, now he's clarifying.
Oh, now he's backtracking.
But Benjamin, come on, you had a podcast question and so much context, couldn't put it in the chat. You had to talk it out.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate being on here. I've been listening to the podcast for months now and happy to be on the live, but really there's just a bit of a complex context to the situation, and it's kind of in regards to the content that you put out, as podcasting being a supplementary channel to pre-existing and performing channels. And so really the question is, I work in a company, very lean team, and it's really hard to get some of that expert insight and real valuable information that I want to put out to customers when everybody is so busy day to day. Where scheduling out an hour for a phone call with somebody internally is a task. And so podcasting so far for me has been a way to excite people about sharing their insight and actually getting them to, set aside 30 minutes of their day to really express, one, from the sales team, what the conversations that they're having with prospects, as well as with our design team, and kind of some of the key pain points. I mean, I can't get them to put that in text or to really get them to have that conversation over the phone. But when I put it in the form of, hey, let's get on and let's make a podcast episode, they get excited about that. And so sure, we have other channels that are performing, but I would like to invest more time and effort into podcasting to use it to really extract some of that valuable insight from our team members. And I was just curious your insight on that, because you have created a bunch of content about, I mean, the whole where are the leads post that you had, or, I mean, creating a podcast, having the, I mean, SDR come and say, hey, where are the leads? It's not something that you want, or that you really are ever wanting to have happen, but I just feel like it could be very valuable. And so I was curious your take on that.
Cool. So just to make sure I understand you correctly, you want to create a podcast and leverage internal employees to share things that they know and then put that onto a podcast.
Yeah. So essentially, I mean, for us, we're a company that does prefabricated housing across the US. And so a lot of the pain points that our customers are facing are issues in the design process, or issues in design when actually designing these custom homes with an architect, and things that they can overlook, which ends up causing complications in the future once the structure's built. And so it's tough to really get that out of anyone without kind of, I mean, really prefacing it as we're going to hop on for a podcast. And so I think there's ways that even whether or not I use it as a podcast or just start to compile this information in these video clips and audio clips to actually create the content myself and then launch the podcast later, I was a little bit curious on,
So a couple notes, not necessarily for you, but more for the listeners, and then we'll get to this, is that when people internally that are subject matter experts do not want to participate in your podcast, this is a mindset and prioritization issue. They are not all so busy that they cannot do it. They just don't feel like it's an important thing to do. I've been there before. We had people that were previously neonatologists, and I would have loved, and they were an employee of ours, and I would have loved to have them in our podcast 3 times a week, because we were selling to neonatologists and they knew them way better than I did. It would be way easier to interview the person that knows what they're talking about than for me to try and put together information. But that person had other responsibilities, and the company didn't have the mindset that a podcast was important. And so the first step in getting in, if you feel that resistance internally, know that those people are not so busy. They just haven't prioritized this thing. Now, moving a little bit forward, the one thing that I'm going to try and see the future for you on is that one common mistake that companies run into when they only leverage internal people is that it doesn't match what their customers actually want. And especially when there's revolving hosts and revolving people that may not understand the dynamics of the podcast, may not understand perfectly the purpose of the podcast, and it may just not hit. I think that's something to be aware of. It can work, it clearly can, but I think that is one type of miss. So when you think, why don't you, I've said a couple of things, why don't you ask a follow-up, and then I'll kind of give you some direction on the actual podcast.
I mean, that's great insight, because even just kind of getting it out there and speaking my mind there, it kind of makes me think that a way that I could look at it is kind of bringing them on to capture these recordings and take that insight and just create content, because really this content is focused around, I mean, certain topics that our sales team has brought up that are just crucial pain points. And I mean, after building and being in the industry for almost 30 years now, it's just some of those issues that come up, I guess, project after project, and things that we know need to be addressed that nobody else is addressing, and hopped on one, I mean, content subject this year and just started blowing the organic traffic out of the water because nobody had been talking about the subject. And it's just a matter of, I want to be providing the most valuable content to the users that are landing on our site. And so much of what I produce and put out is based on research that I'm doing through other third parties, and it's not actually coming from inside. And so it's more so that I just am looking for a way to extract that insight internally. And I don't know what it is. It's especially with the design team that podcasting gets them excited. And so when
And so when I ran into that issue, when we had 3 or 4 scientific medical experts that were not participating in the podcast because they didn't think that it was important, what I did was I went out. So instead of instead of interviewing the company, director of scientific affairs or whatever it was, I went out and got the top pediatric physician at Rainbow Baby and Children's Hospital and talked to them instead. And so that is an option as well. I understand that the people on the design team want to do it. I just want you to consider the idea that perhaps you interviewing external experts and making sure that those external experts are communicating a specific point that helps your customers. Because oftentimes the interview from an external person comes from a place of a place where they don't have a stake in the outcome. I think another risk that I just kind of put up is when people that come from sales or other departments, oftentimes they might lean into sales mode as opposed to brand mode, and sales mode doesn't work on podcasts. So those are a couple other ideas. Now, if you do want to use the internal employees and interview them, I think that it can work. I think that you need to have very tight guidelines and understanding about what the people on the other end want, and then start to frame up the topics in a way that truly to answer those types of questions. Like ours right here is super open format, right? I'm not sure that would fly on yours, especially with people that are not used to speaking on podcasts and things like that. You might want to have short form audio that covers a specific point and gets out why you should design your roof like this. 5 minutes. 3 things to avoid when trying to build this house, or what, you know what I mean? Like whatever those things are, covering a specific really tight point on a podcast with internal employees may be the route for you. I think you should at least try that. And then lastly, you had mentioned it, like the odds of this dramatically moving the needle in the first 90 days, even 180, even potentially 365 or beyond, are, I would say low to potential. And so if you have other internal pressures to deliver something, and this ends up taking away from it in the short term, it could create some misalignment with other people in your organization.
Great. I really appreciate the insight. Do you care if I follow up with just one more podcasting question?
We're here. Let's do it, man.
Great. So in regards to leveraging partner relationships on podcasts, just as a newer entrant into the industry, that I see there as being a ton of potential in leveraging some of these relationships that we have with suppliers and whatnot. And I've already reached out and kind of forged those relationships with our marketing team and some of these executives that are from our suppliers. And so there's potential there. That's one area where I'm a little bit more hesitant to move forward with, just because I don't necessarily know how an executive from, say, a supplier of ours is going to necessarily deliver content that's going to provide value to our audience. I think that there's value in touching on their branding and the audience that they already have established, but the content that we would create, I just am having a hard time finding alignment. Yeah.
I'll give you a really easy way to do this. Is just to go out and do it, and then you can decide after you're recorded whether it belongs on published, whether it belongs in the trash, or somewhere in between, right? Like you go out and interview a supplier and you decide that subjectively you don't believe that it's going to provide value to the audience, then you don't have to publish it. And so I think there's a way to go out and do some things, learn, use your filter, distribute it, listen to the audience, and then keep going in a feedback loop until you find something that's working. I think that's the right approach. And you'll probably end up in a different kind of like strategy, just like I did when I went through this process several times. You probably will end up at a different strategy at the end because the strategy gets created while you start doing it.
Perfect. Got to test it. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
Cool. Good to see you, Ben.
Thanks, Benjamin. Abby, you're next, but Joseph has a quick follow-up on this topic, and then we're going to the warm take. I can't wait.
Oh, yeah. Can't wait for that.
Joseph, I'm unmuting you, though, so come on in.
Hi. Yeah,
What's up? Is this the first time you've asked a question on here? I've seen you everywhere.
Yeah, first time. I've watched so many of these now. I've watched so many. Just a quick follow-up. I run like a podcast agency, and something I come into a lot with, particularly with a few of my clients where the industry is particularly technical, is with the micro content posts, so what we do is we'll kind of break the full long form episode down into a full transcript and then use that to kind of create the micro content. Something I guess we come into a few times is where some of the actual micro content pieces, the topics that they're talking about, do require quite a bit more context from an expert on that topic, which can be hard sometimes when we're creating 5 to 10 pieces of micro content per episode. So it's just, how do you involve, and have you got a process for involving that kind of subject matter expert in that micro content process? Because obviously, if you're creating 5 to 10 different pieces of micro content per episode, it can be difficult to kind of get that information you need. I've probably just gone on a really long tangent now.
Yeah,
so
you're good.
you're good.
Part of me wants to talk about the idea that every topic is technical for people that don't understand it, right? Like the things that we talk about right here, a lot of people have no idea what the acronyms, they have no idea what the words means, right? Like this is technical too. And we've been easily able, for someone that doesn't have a really strong sense of demand gen, to be able to log the footage, clip it, and then put together headers with no insight from me. Right. And so I would push back on you and say that I'm sure that it's possible. And it most likely does not have to do with the post-production process. It has to do with the structure when you're recording, right? Like this exact situation right now is 100% perfect for micro clips, because you come on, you ask your question, I answer it, somebody else comes on, and that's the end of the clip. And then it's from start to finish. And then if we needed more context, we could actually have your voice or you know what I mean? We could bring you in to set the table of the context, and then we answer the question. But oftentimes there's enough context, because I've learned to create it at the beginning based on the question, that we don't even need to do that. So I would go. You
say it's not always really the creating the header, like you've got the header at the top of your little clips that you play. That's like the easy part. It's where the hard part can be sometimes, because if we're writing the actual content for the posts for some of our clients, it's how that process works.
So are you falling down on the copywriting of the post?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is perfect. This is a 100% amazing example that I want to share. Is like, my content would not work nearly as well if somebody else wrote the content, wrote the copy. The copy is my secret weapon, right? The reason being is because I have a specific tone of voice. I write in a specific way. It gets better the longer that you do it. And it tightly matches what I had in my brain, that I'm able to create more context for the video, knowing that a ton of people will read the copy and never even watch the video. Right. And so I hate to say this, but I just believe that it's true. And I think it's going to help you, is that writing content for somebody else is a means to an end. It's going to need to change in some way. And what the scary part for executives that use this type of service is the idea that something that you do wildly takes off. They get to 50,000 followers. Everyone's expecting stuff from them, and they have no idea what to do. That's the risk. And so what we've done, and I can just kind of tell you, I totally understand that when I say this, if there's executives listening, they're going to be like, forget that. Have someone else write it. I'm too busy. Just goes back to the idea. If you think that you're too busy to create information for your customers, for LinkedIn every day, then you are focused on the wrong things. It is literally communication with your customers. And so what we've done is we've created a system where all I need to do is sit on here and talk. And then I go into a box drive. And right now I wish I had the number. Last time I checked, it was 700, but it's probably higher now. I have 700 videos to choose from. I'll never be able to post all of them. And I can go through and scan them. I can figure out which one I have something that compelled to say. And then I go in and I write the copy, and I'm down to a place. At the beginning, it took me 45 minutes. And now I'm down to a place where I can bang it out in 3 to 10 minutes, depending on what's going on. And so my only thing is on the creation standpoint with all of you, or whether I'm doing a podcast, and then on the little bit of copy, editing it down and hitting the post button, and then answering the comments. And so if you look at this entire system, it's hard to outsource components of it because you need the whole thing, right? Like a huge part of my success early on was because I left really strong comments. And then my audience told me that the comments were smart. And then I posted those as real posts. And that I listened to all the comments. The executive that's having you write the copy is not reading their comments, is not responding to their comments, is not building relationships and community with those people. And that's where the breakdown is, right? Like it would be equivalent. I think people will get this. It would be equivalent to me needing to go to some type of network dinner or whatever and sending somebody else. That's what it would be like, right? Like they're doing all the talking, they're doing all the relationships, they're doing all the work, but it's not me, right? We need to think, we need to think about social in a different way. It's literally online relationship building, business development, and communication. And so I would, to be honest, if I was you, I would figure out a way to make that part of the process as simple for someone as possible so that they can do it. And I would teach them to fish rather than fish for them. It's going to hurt your LTV. But you might be able to charge more in the short term and you'll still get the post-production on the video and other things. I would just think about adjusting your business model, because I think that it's always going to be a challenge. You're always going to have a customer with a technical, there is always going to be something. We did one with a company that did digital transformation. I had no idea what they were talking about when they started talking about software. I would have never been able to write copy that actually resonated, But what we were able to do was teach the CEO of that company how to write that stuff and give him confidence and coach him on how important it is. And then get them to a point where they see the actual result. I call it the aha moment. You see when you post something and 50 people that are your potential customers comment on it.
Yeah, because if they're writing it for themselves, they're seeing the kind of value firsthand rather than someone. That makes sense. Okay, yeah, that answered my question.
Yeah, hope it was helpful. Sometimes it's not the best news, but I just try and tell the truth and help you.
Yeah, makes sense. Cheers.
Cool, man. Good to see you.
Thanks, Joseph. All right, maybe this is the start of a new segment, Warm Takes. It's good to see you, Abe.
Yeah, good to see you again.
Hey, Chris. Hey, Megan. Hey, everyone.
Hey.
I'm glad to kick off this new segment of Warm Takes. Maybe it'll be a new category of micro content on LinkedIn. Let's see what happens.
I love it.
So at first, when I was thinking about this, it really was a hot take like 45 minutes ago, but now it's like getting cooler and cooler and cooler. It's like, been in the fridge for a couple hours take at this point. So let's see how it goes. But my take, and I'd like your feedback on this, is that most marketing teams they way over prioritize content marketing as a category of marketing and way under prioritize product marketing. And what I mean by that is that I think that what I'm seeing for us at my company is that our content marketing stack and playbook actually it needs to be way simpler than what it is. Yeah, that's one of my kids on the couch back there. Like the assumption that everybody needs a blog and a podcast and webinars and ebooks and like this whole array of like a media company's worth of content marketing assets, and then to produce like a new one each week or every 2 weeks or every month is just like completely out of touch with what's actually needed today. And then what I'm seeing for us, and this is what I want to get your feedback on, is that like the content layer of your marketing can actually be much thinner or simpler, I should say, and just like much more deeply invested in that. Something like a podcast and like a online live community engagement style like you're doing right here, or just a couple of content formats that really resonate with your audience that allow you to build an audience there. And then really deep and strong product marketing, which is what I've been experiencing for myself and what I see that a lot of companies are more weak in. And so like, it's better to spend your marketing resources, for example, building out additional use case pages or making your product feature page 10x better than what it is today, or making really great product how-to videos, for example, to educate your audience and just to speak to your product directly, as opposed to like planning your next 3-part webinar series and finding the guests for that. Not to completely, poo on content marketing, but just to say that I think that there's an imbalance between the investment in content marketing and like doing the next topic that's in market or that's hot or what have you for your audience and for your buyers, and like corresponding underinvestment in product marketing. And that content marketing is sometimes used as like a band-aid for that. And the real place to invest to move the needle is to spend more time and resources on your product marketing, as people actually understand what it is that you're selling and how they can use it and how it applies to their industry. And that will lead to more results, direct hand raisers for your product versus just, more and more leads in the system or something like that through your content.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
so
Ashley put it well. It's like when your product isn't great, you end up leaning on content marketing, or when your product marketing isn't great and you haven't done the work to create great product marketing, you end up leaning on content to try to hit some kind of other marketing metrics that you can point to.
Yeah. So in some of these things, like, I don't think that I see it the way that a lot of people do, right? Like content marketing, product marketing feels kind of the same to me. You know what I mean? Like I think when done well, there's really not too much of a difference aside from if you think about use case pages versus how you get people to understand the use cases, right? Like a use case page, technically is content, right? It's just it's focused on the product versus focused on, top of funnel or irrelevant search terms or thought leadership, as much as I don't like that word, right? And so my hot take in response to your warm take is that companies are obsessed with content creation and have no sense about distribution. And so that's why you see a ton of SEO blogs, and you don't see a lot of brands shining in other places other than that. And I think that it's more focused on the distribution. I can't tell you how, not to discount your point, like product marketing is critical. I just think that I consider product marketing a lot more of a strategic function that connects the customer to demand gen versus content marketing, where in a lot of cases, content marketing is completely disconnected from the customer and more focused on what you see in SEMrush, right? And so that's sort of in the way that I see it. When we have a company that has strong product marketing and they know their customers and they know the value propositions and they know the messaging that resonates, putting that into creative and pushing it out to their target buyers makes things super easy. Right. And so I do believe that that's super important. But if you just did the product marketing and you didn't get people to consume it, you didn't have the proper distribution of that information, you would actually end up in the same place. And so whether it's content marketing or what you consider product marketing, the missing pieces are understanding your customers so that the content actually resonates or the messaging and use cases actually work, and then effective distribution, which gives you feedback about, hey, those people really didn't care about that use case. But if you look at the LinkedIn demographics insights, all the clicks were coming from FinServe. So this use case is working at FinServe. Let's feed that back to the team, right? And if you don't have distribution, you never get those insights. You never learn until you're in like a one-to-one sales conversation or you do market research. And a lot of companies don't do like market research in that way. And so I think the answer is effective, like modern distribution. Even it goes back to the podcast question. A ton of podcasts never get any listenership because they're just sitting there. It's just like search, waiting for someone to magically find their, go in and search the best B2B SaaS demand gen ABM podcast. And not a ton of people are doing that, right? Like most of our viewers come through LinkedIn or word of mouth. Do we pick up people in search that search SaaS marketing podcasts? Yes. But the upside would be like we wouldn't get the people in search if we didn't have the volume, which drove the reviews, which drove the higher rankings, which got people into search, right? So it's like chicken and the egg. What do you do first? And it's figuring out your customers and then distribution. And then the system starts to feed itself. You put something out in content top of funnel and you get immediate feedback. That's why I love LinkedIn right now. The exact same effect happened in Facebook 2016. I would run ads and get tons of comments from my exact buyers about everything that they thought. Good things, bad things, objections, terrible stories, great stories, blah, 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 all these different things. that doesn't exist on Facebook anymore, but it's happening on LinkedIn organic right now. It doesn't happen on LinkedIn paid either. You get very few comments on LinkedIn paid, except for the occasional person. And sometimes I'm this person that's kind of doing a smart ass little comment about, why are you marketing this healthcare device to me? Like, target better. You know what I mean? I can tell you're wasting a bunch of money. And so those are the types of comments you get on LinkedIn ads. But if you have the right audience, organic feedback on LinkedIn for content is incredible.
Cool.
What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's good. I think maybe the way I'm kind of like digesting it is like, it's like priority number one for demand gen marketer is to like max out, so to speak, the value of distributing product marketing related content. So whether that's product videos or case studies that are specific to certain industries or audiences or use cases, or marketing directly product pages or use case pages or industry pages or whatever, like max that out first, because that distribution, if you can create engagement around that, that's going to be, short conversion. That's going to be cash pretty quickly. And then if you still have other goals that you need to hit in terms of like building out a broader audience or, creating some relationship with people who are not in market to buy at the moment, then like other content properties like a podcast or webinars or what have you to help to build up an audience outside of your in-market group, like move to that afterwards after maxing out the value of that product marketing style.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree. And whether you're kind of like got one running, and depending on the size of your team and your resources, you could kind of like be building them both at the same time. You could do them in serial, one after the other. I think there's a lot of different ways, but focusing on the, I hate using the term bottom of funnel, but like it's what people understand. Like lower funnel product marketing with effective distribution with the right messaging is going to get you faster results than building a podcast. It's not to say that type of marketing is better than a podcast, just in terms of how things get built. And like I said in a different post this week, oftentimes when people say either or, the answer is both.
Right.
So I think this was a good test segment. What I would challenge is let's come back with another hot take next week, and then we'll decide whether or not to make it a full segment. I think we need one more hit to understand.
I appreciated your point on focus, though. I think that's so important. I think people that try to do too much and do it all okay never works out. So I'm into it.
Let's go back to this one real quick. Is that I've been thinking a lot. Like we're running that exactly what Abai just talked about: product marketing, use cases, features, integrations, value propositions, targeted paid at people, and getting really great results for companies. And then I look around and I see nobody else doing it. And I'm like, and nobody else is an overstatement. There's some companies doing enough, shouted a couple of them out, but like for the most part, there's not enough companies doing that action right now, specifically on MarTech vendors. Like, what the heck are you doing? Like MarTech vendors should be living in there. And so, yeah.
Ready for your next question? I got more.
I'm always so last time we went forever, and I was feeling good forever. We'll see, because I could feel when I'm getting a little bit loopy, and we're getting close. So let's pave on until I fall over out of my chair. That'll be when you guys all decide that it's time to leave.
All right, I'll keep a close eye out.
Thank you,
Julian. You had a couple questions. I'm going to bring you on. It's good to have you back.
Hey guys, what's going on?
Hey.
What's up, Julian?
You can
pick
much,
just folding laundry. That's why I'm got my video off. I don't think you guys want to see that pile. Okay, so I had two questions. I think the more interesting one is about incentivizing your team to post on organic social or LinkedIn. Have you seen any good incentive systems that accomplish that, or any good system in general that facilitates it? I think I know your answer, but I wanted to ask anyways.
We did contests here.
Chris pays me $5 every time I post on LinkedIn. No.
You're getting rich, Megan, with all those posts. No, we did, and it's outside of certain like subset. Like I wasn't included in this contest, but like for the people that work at our company, we did a content, I think it was like last October, which then spilled into November, which was like, whoever puts out the most, and there was no, like, you can't just check the box and say like, my day was good. Like, you have to have a meaningful post, and whoever had the most meaningful posts within a certain period of time, would win a cash prize. And that drove a lot of the behaviors that we were looking for, as simple as it sounds, right? Like, we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. It was just gamification. People are competitive. They want to try and win. We had like a little leaderboard going. If we could do it again, I think we would do it even better in terms of the gamification part of it. And some of those behaviors have stuck. Several of the people at our company continue to post on a regular basis. And the spark was that little like competition that we put on. And so I think something as simple as that can get the job done. And I think it's an interesting thing because, like, if you look at how other people might think about doing it, like there's paper post, which I don't recommend. I just think it's going to drive the wrong outcomes. And as I talk about it out loud, like the competition nature, if you have a team of 7 SDRs and you want to, incentivize them, those people are oftentimes like competitive people. And so kind of lean into that a little bit. And then I think they're going to find ways to make it fun. And then at the end of that, whatever you do 30 days, maybe you have 2 or 3 SDRs that are posting 4 times a week, which is 2 or 3 more than you had before you started.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Chris.
So that one's helpful. And then I think the most, if we like zoom out a little bit from at a higher level, the key for executives is to set the example. People at Refine Labs want to post on LinkedIn because they see the benefits. I demonstrate the behaviors. They see what's going on, like, right? So if you're an executive or if you're a team leader and you want your team to do something, then execute the behaviors that you think are like, do the same thing that you want them to do. And a lot of people that are managers inside of companies are like, oh, I'm way too good for that. I'll just tell my people, I'll give them a competition, just tell my people to do it. It's way harder to do the same thing that you're asking your team to do. And so that's another idea, is just to lead by example. That one's good too.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that.
Cool. Great to see you, Julian. Enjoy that laundry. Talk to you. Do you have another question or are you done?
I did have another one, if you'll have me.
Let's do it, as long as you're not too distracted over there.
I am not.
Okay.
So the second one was more technical for Facebook ads. Have you guys seen any impact from the iOS and Safari privacy updates? Or do you expect any? Or do you think Facebook's just going to find a workaround?
We expect some issues. We just don't know what they are yet. So we don't know what they are. What we've done over the past 6 months is have a very, very strong movement in our confidence in executing LinkedIn at not a one-to-one results basis, but executing LinkedIn at a level that is close to what Facebook can do. I still believe that Facebook is significantly better than LinkedIn for a lot of different companies, especially ones that have large total addressable markets. And so we've hedged our bets by making sure that we have confidence in other channels, specifically LinkedIn and YouTube. As one piece, the attribution window is going to decline. I'm already getting notifications. They're going to adjust to a 7-day attribution window, some things like that. We do have, I can pull the data and come back to you next week, but we do track attribution windows in 1, 7, and 28 days. And my general feeling, understanding, don't quote me on this, but I believe that most of the people convert within 7. And so when they move to a 7-day attribution window, you might lose a couple of different conversions. You might underreport, but I believe that we're underreporting already, right? And so I know that what's being shown inside of Facebook gives me confidence that this is the audience out of the 4 that I'm running that I really want to continue to refine and go after and iterate. I know that this exact message is driving the outcomes that I want. I have confidence that I spent $700 on the ad. I got 2 influence demos. the demos that I'm looking at as I get every single email when a demo request comes in. There's no unqualified buyers coming in. There's no trash. And so I can make an assumption that this is influencing demos, and most of the demos are good in converting to SAL at 80+%. And I'm good with that. And so again, as I've mentioned a couple times, like if the landscape changes, that we need to adjust, right? Like I believe that as things get taken away from marketers, the best marketers actually get an advantage, and the marketers that are not as strong become at a disadvantage because they don't have these, what I consider, crutches. Like I don't need any tools, and I could do marketing in a great way. All I need is a CRM. I don't need, like we just talked about, intent data and x16 and sales engagement platforms and all these different things. I don't need any of it. These things help, but they are not absolutely necessary. I've built this. Most of the model is effectively create information that people want and figure out how to get it to them. And all of that stuff can be done with not a lot of budget, and native ad platforms or organic channels are the way to get it done. And then just when it comes to the tools and the measurement, is one time the tool can optimize, right? So targeting on B2B, we have several tools that definitely optimize that process and make that thing more efficient. And then the second thing that tools help a lot for, especially the way that we do marketing, is based purely on measurement, right? Like our marketing would work whether or not we can measure it, but our customers require us that we measure it because they've been brainwashed to think that, as opposed to just looking at what's happening in the CRM. So short answer, I'm cool with it. If it impacts Facebook, we'll move. Every marketer is in the same position, and we'll move on and figure out something better.
I think I have a good closing question that is related to a lot of the things that we talked about. It was submitted in advance from, I think it's Mikal, but he's not able to join usually, so I'm going to read it on his behalf.
Cool. Remind me that we want to do a poll at the end too. I'll write it down, but go ahead.
All right, poll after this.
Yeah, I got it circled here.
So this is fun. Based on all of your advice, Chris, he's preparing to launch a podcast, and he thinks that the AMA style is going to be a good format for him. He sells a course and group coaching sessions. So he's essentially helps small B2B companies with organic client acquisition. And essentially he believes the most valuable part of his service is essentially these consulting calls where he's answering their questions, providing advisory. So
Common
now
model. Yep.
Yeah, what he's thinking about is if he does a podcast where he invites people to ask questions, is he undermining the value of the calls that he's providing for his paying clients? He says, I know you're not concerned about this. You say that often. You're an agency, so there is work that you do for your clients that pay you. They don't have time to do the work on their own. They're going to hire you to do it. He doesn't actually execute. He's simply coaching. And so he was curious what your take on this was, and if you think it's a good idea for him to move forward with the podcast, or if you have a different take.
This is always a good idea, right? There's going to be the occasional people that listen to it and go and do whatever they want, and that's fine. And there's other people that are going to listen to it and they're going to need accountability, or they're going to want more information, or they're going to want it specifically curated for them, or all these different reasons, and they're going to buy. And those people that bought are more than what you have right now. And if you don't create the podcast, all those people are looking for a podcast about what you're doing, and they're going to find somebody else. And the people that do buy from somebody like that are going to buy from somebody other than you. Right. And so this is a good idea. We need to be in a mindset of abundance. There are, I don't know what your business, but I imagine that there are millions of people that could buy your consulting packages. Right. And so if you think about it, there's a million people. You don't need a million, especially if it's just you and you're a solopreneur and you're not trying to scale and grow this. And so I think that you should lean into the podcast heavily. There are comps everywhere on this, like fitness, as much as I don't like a lot of it because it doesn't work out. Life coaches, business coaches. There's a ton of different things where people sell consulting, pure consulting, and use a podcast as a main form of acquisition, which builds credibility, trust, and then teaches someone the things that they need to know in order to actually get over the hump and say, I want to solve this problem, and this is the person that made me aware of it, and therefore I'm going to go with them. And so I don't know how much more aggressively I can come out of the gate on this one, but you need to do this. And I would, like, we've been starting to do it right now. We're getting initial good feedback, and I'm going to continue to do it. Is we are, for, it's non-client based because we're under NDAs, but for people that like can't afford what we're selling, or not at the right stage, or oftentimes are not the right fit for whatever reason, like we're doing free consulting calls I'm doing free consulting calls as a way to create content that demonstrates even more depth than what we're doing here. Right? Like, so we have someone coming in and they're trying to start a podcast for robots, or they're trying to do this thing for cybersecurity. And it's a, whatever, I don't know if it's a managed service provider, I don't know what the terminology is, but they're trying to do this thing for cybersecurity. It's professional services. It's not the right fit for us. But if I go on a consulting call with them, and then somebody that works in cybersecurity SaaS and listens to it and understands that level of expertise and the creativity and the on the fly, like, expertise that I'm able to demonstrate, maybe they become a customer. And so, you should definitely do this, and never think about the people that listen and don't buy from you. There are tens of thousands of people that consume my content every day and are never going to buy anything from me. And I don't care at all. I'm happy for them. I'm happy. And I'm grateful that they even listen to or watch my LinkedIn videos over somebody else's, because that person might know somebody. And even if they don't know, even if I get absolutely nothing out of it, the fact that they're actually consuming my stuff over all the different things that they could do makes me happy.
Chris Glansman wrote something really poetic in the chat. Information wants to be free. It's almost a law of physics in this day and age. Great quote.
Let's get a t-shirt for that.
Information wants to be free. So
whatever advice you're giving to small businesses, it's already out there somewhere. There's nothing about what I say that is not already out there. I'm just able to communicate it and distribute it in a way that resonates with people. The same thing goes for you. You need to be the person that people know in small business land. If you pick a niche, or if you just want to stay generic small business, you need to be the person that people know that help. And so the way that you do that is through, especially in a consulting or professional services, non-product based company, is through what I find is the most effective long-form organic communication. Cool. We closing out? You shutting me down? I think it's time.
I think it's time. What poll do you got?
Yeah. So just let's remember, Angelica, that what parts of B2B marketing can be outsourced. I think there's some good stuff in there. Let's just move that to next week. So we moved to speaker view. I'm kind of going off the cuff here, but I'm more so curious. And so don't give me a thumbs up if you don't actually feel that way. I just want to learn. Okay. So we got these nice jackets here, and whether it's a jacket or something else, if we put together, whether it was some type of merch thing or otherwise, would you consider buying it or definitely not? You're not going to hurt my feelings if you say no. You're going to help me if you say no. We got one vote so far, and Jess says yes. Everyone else is okay. I'm going to take no vote as a no. Okay. This is great. We learned something. Nobody wants our merch. It's cool. Maybe we'll come out with something like more stylish later. Find a better looking model than me, and then you guys will want it. Cool. No, I appreciate that. I'm happy that all of you get value out of it. But one of the big things that I get out of it is that type of stuff like that, right? Like those insights from you is really helpful to me, and I really appreciate it, right? So if it's a good idea, I would love if you told me. And if it's a shitty idea, I would also love if you told me. Cool. So on that note, we'll save what parts of B2B marketing can be outsourced for next week. And it's been a pleasure. Good to see a couple people took a couple weeks off. Maybe you took the holidays off and, getting a little slow start to January, but it's great to see you all back. And we did put the fern in. It was nowhere near as much of a splash as Megan expected.
It was the lighting. The lighting was
disappointed.
Well, we're going to up our production value for the fern lighting.
Yeah. So we'll try and figure it out for next week. Austin wasn't here, I don't think, so he missed it. But anyway, it's late. We'll let everyone move on. Really, again, great to see you. Hope to see you again next week. If you can make it, we haven't had Gaetano on here for a while. Him and I haven't chatted in a while, so I think it's going to be an awesome chat. 12 p.m. on this Thursday in 2 days, 12 p.m. Eastern. The Zoom link will go out tomorrow. So if you can make it, great. Otherwise, we'll see you here hopefully next week.
Have a good week, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. See you soon.